meeting of the Lake Bluff Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Inkeman.
Here.
Trustee Brienne.
Here.
Trustee Fisher. Here. Trustee Marquis.
Here.
Trustee Rappin.
Here.
Trustee Ryder.
Here.
Thank you. Please stand and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
Look, my food in my mouth.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is our consideration of the minutes of October 25, 2021 Village Board regular meetings. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any comment, any change? Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Brienne.
Aye.
Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Marquis.
Aye.
Trustee Rappin.
Aye.
Trustee Ryder.
Aye.
Trustee Inkeman.
Aye.
Thank you. Next is our non-agenda items and visitors. The village president and board of trustees allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the village board of trustees on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the village board of trustees is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Please.
My name is Stephanie Bjork. We own the home at 414 East Prospect in Lake Bluff. I would just like to as I sat in the previous meeting and the discussion of the road survey, I would just like to ask if the board would inquire what the content is of the slurry coating that they referred to see what that product is. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe there might be people online willing to ask questions as well.
Mr. Stolzenberg, you are able to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Mark Stolzenberg. As many of you likely know, Union Pacific is currently attempting to exit commuter rail operations here in the Chicago area. Last month, Union Pacific won a decision in federal district court allowing them to do that. Along the lines that it operates, Union Pacific owns many of the train stations in addition to land adjacent to those stations, such as parking lots. Of course, that includes the Union Pacific North Line, which serves Lake Bluff. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, that Union Pacific owns our train station and some or all of the adjacent parking lot. Last Thursday, I read an article in the Sun-Times explaining that Union Pacific was under contract to sell to an unnamed developer 41 train stations and/or parcels of land adjacent to stations along UP-operated lines as part of its plan to exit commuter operations, and that many municipalities are now attempting to find ways to buy back their train stations, adjacent parking lots, and other parcels of land adjacent to those stations. There appears to be some sort of right of first refusal, although from the press reports, I couldn't exactly tell what that might be. Now, of course, our train station is a historic building that's important for our community, and the parking lot adjacent to it, of course, is of critical importance because of our parking issues. So a couple of questions to consider. First, is Lake Bluff's train station covered by the sales contract between Union Pacific and the developer? Second, is some or all of our train station parking lot also covered by that sales contract? Third, what's the price for Lake Bluff to buy back the train station and parking lot? Fourth, if you know, where are we in this process? And what measures are we taking to ensure that our train station and parking lot, if covered by the sales contract, are not sold out from underneath us? And fifth, what impact might the recent expenditures on the streetscape project, including construction costs and consulting fees, have on our ability to buy back our train station and parking lot? I realize this hasn't received a ton of press, but for the impacted communities, potentially including ours, this is of significant potential importance, and any light that you can shed on this would be helpful. Thanks so much.
Yeah, Peter, I see you're there. Do you want to comment on the litigation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Mark is right. Union Pacific and Metro have been involved in litigation. The district court in Northern District of Illinois issued an opinion saying that Union Pacific had the right, the legal right, if it chose to get out of the business. That decision is going to be appealed by Metro. So we're going to have to wait and see how that litigation resolves itself. With regard to Mark's other question, Lake Bluff's train station nor parking lot is part of the 41 properties that were identified in the newspaper article and that were identified or that are subject to the contract that Union Pacific has apparently, although no one's seen the contract, entered into with the developer. The developer's name, I can't recall it, but it is known. They have met with several other communities, not Lake Bluff, but several other communities, mostly on the northwest line, not on the north line. And almost all of the properties in that 41 are on the northwest line. I think the only ones on the north line are located in Waukegan and North Chicago. I believe that's correct. Maybe Zion as well. And as Drew, you're going to have to help me as to the cost and the current legal status of our train station and parking lot and streetscape question.
Yeah, it does. The property that is on the block is inclusive of the train station in what everybody knows as the parking lot at the train station, that same footprint. And just to correct Peter, the developer did come to Village Hall and had a very preliminary conversation with staff here. But the asking price, 3.23 million was the number that they had on it. The conversations that have been had with a lot of communities around the area is that people tend to think that's a little amplified. And, but the good news is that the village has ultimate control over that property. It's zoned railroad. And so anything that would happen there would have to go through this body and the PCZBA, the Planning Commission Zoning Board of Appeals. So the village has zoning control over the site. And as Mark correctly noted too, it is a historic structure, so there's controls for that as well. So I think right now the village is in a wait and see mode with what happens with the developer. There's no, from what I understand, and again, like Peter said, nobody's seen the deal between the Union Pacific and the developer, but it seems to be that there is very little risk for the developer, and that in terms of tying up all these properties, they're not tying up a lot of dollars and resources, so that they're going to just play it slow. So right now, like Peter said also, with the court case tying things up operationally about the question of serving the commuter rail is going to be tied up for some time in the courts.
Yeah. And I think there's only about $50,000 worth of revenue from that parking, and that would not pay the debt service on $2.5 million or whatever it ended up being as a loan.
Yeah.
So if we don't allow them to
won't
develop
pencil out for
anything else,
anybody.
it's not going to flow.
No, right.
Developer will become disinterested when we do not approve something else.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you very much. So Mark, yes, that has been on our radar. Thank you very much for speaking up.
Mark, did that answer your questions?
I think so. I appreciate that. Look, I hadn't heard anything about this until I saw that article on Thursday. So it was a little shocking to see that someone was putting our train station under contract.
True.
Yeah. It's not our
So
train
thank you.
station though. Right, we're a
Lake
tenant.
Bluff train station under
Yes,
contract.
yeah.
Yes. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. Anybody else has a public comment?
Doesn't appear so.
Thank you very much. Next, do we have also
Mr. Indris.
Mr. Andres?
Hi there. My name's Ken Endres. I'm the liaison officer for the commanding officer at Naval Station Great Lakes. And Captain Williamson, he's came on board the 7th of May. And Captain Leong, which some of you are familiar with, has now transferred out of the area and is enjoying his new job. Captain Williamson would like to extend his best wishes to the board here. You are our next closest neighbor, since we reside within North Chicago. But just wanted to mention that I gave Drew a few of my calling cards. If you need to get a hold of the captain and want another alternate means, I am one of those means that you can do that. Several years ago, the Great Lakes had developed a First Friday event. That's where we invite the leadership of the communities that surround us to come to the base, spend a few hours talking with our various leaderships, people there at Great Lakes. We are looking at possibly starting it as early as December, would be the 3rd. But it's more likely we'll probably start after the first of the year. But I will be passing on the names of the new board members and also to make sure that those names are available for an invite to come to that event in the future. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Now, it's great to have Ken here. He's come to several meetings over the years. The village has enjoyed a great relationship with Great Lakes Naval Station, and I know we've worked to solve problems together. We've had a great relationship with our fire departments over the years, and doing the classic change of quarters from time to time, and we've solved other problems in the community working together. So, looking forward to keeping to do so. And the after hours event, when that comes up again, it was at, what's the name of the venue there? Porter Hall?
Well, it was at what we called the Port of Call,
Yes.
but recently they're looking at going to our Epic Center, which is the recreational facility for the sailors at the base. But it would depend on how many comes and where it's best to hold it. It was interesting that earlier in the previous meeting, Russell's name came up, and I don't know how many times I had interfaced with him in the years past. And I've been at Great Lakes for 42 years, so my history with the communities around Great Lakes is extensive, and I enjoy the communities.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very
thanks
much.
for coming.
And thank you
Appreciate your
very much
time.
for visiting us and managing a relationship with us. Next is our village board sets the order of a meeting. The village president and board of trustees will entertain requests from anyone present on the order of business to be conducted during the village board meeting. Do we have a request? Moving forward. Next is our village finance report. And that would be the warrant report for October 26 to November 8, 2021, and October 2021 payroll expenditures. The summary of background and reason for request is, first, the expenditure of village funds for payment of invoices in the amount of $688,415.34 for October 26 to November 8th. And second, expenditure of village fund for payment of payroll in the amount of $292,668.91 for October 2021, for a total expenditures of $981,084.25. The reports and documents attached are the warrant report for October 26 to November 8, 2021, again for $688,415.34. And as such, the invoice register report shows checks with a status of open or paid. All checks with a status of open are computer-generated checks for the board final approval. Checks with a status of paid are checks processed manually. And second, the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 payroll report. I did not ask if there is a motion to approve the warrant.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. So are there any questions?
I had a couple of questions that Drew answered earlier, but I thought I would bring them up just so that Drew could, just talk about some of those
Sure.
details because I found them interesting. The first one related to a Baxter and Woodman payment for NPDES stormwater program, and the other one related to Possibility Place, which I didn't know what that was. So Drew, would you?
Sure. Baxter and Women is an engineering professional services that we contract with specifically, well, for a number of things, but this particular payment has to do with the village's NPDES program, which essentially the federal government requires the village to have a permit to discharge stormwater from our system into federal and state waterways. And Baxter and Women provide services like this for us as well as other communities to stay compliant with the ever-changing rules in this regard. And essentially, the Clean Water Act established that the NPDES stormwater program be implemented, and it's been expanded over time, but it really involves 6 control measures. What deals with public education and outreach on stormwater impacts. So you'll see that in our newsletter and our website. Public involvement and participation. The same illicit discharge and detection and elimination, so that's more around inspecting sites and making sure somebody's not allowing illicit discharges. Also, construction site stormwater runoff control and post-construction management and pollution prevention and good housekeeping for municipal operations.
So that was helpful to know that there wasn't an issue that they were addressing. It was just part of the overall
Ongoing
compliance.
compliance with that
right.
program.
Thank you.
Yep. And the Possibility Place question has to do with the village. Was it this summer? We had a conversation, resident Mickey Collins came in and talked about the village should be considering being more aggressive in our tree planting. We talked about addressing that, and one of the ways we're doing that is the village purchased 75 native trees from Possibility Place. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that nursery. You can buy small 5-gallon container-sized trees that are native species that they source the seeds for from the Midwest region, and very successful and really easy to handle and plant. And so we picked up 75 of those trees, and Public Works is literally putting them in the ground this week and working with Lobola to do the same. I think they got a planned planting this weekend. But it's one way we're trying to make a quick splash and get a lot of native trees in the ground yet this fall.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any more questions on the board?
I have a question. Where are they going? In right-of-ways? Where?
Yes, and yeah, all over. So you'll see we've been, a lot of times residents are kind of reluctant when they look at them because they have a bit of a Charlie Brown Christmas tree look to them, right? Because they're not, two and a half, 3 inches, right? So, but they grow rapidly and very often catch up with their, burlapped and bald other, I guess.
Non-native.
Or just other trees that are packaged that way and come, because usually you stick them in the ground and it's no grow, slow grow, and then they grow. But these just you stick in the ground and they start going, and that they can grow rapidly. But just your knee-jerk reaction is like, it's not a very strong specimen, but they do take off quickly. So we've had conversations with several residents who said, yeah, we'll give them a try. So we're putting them in parkways in certain locations, but in a lot of open spaces along the parkways that we have along 176 and along Sheridan Road.
Awesome.
Lots of places.
I think this is a wonderful program. I mean, in my garden, we lost 5 trees given the drought and everything else, so I think this is absolutely wonderful. Any more questions on this report? Hearing none, this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Next is our village administrator's report. Mr. Irvin?
There is a report in your packets regarding accessory dwelling units. So the Plan Commission Zoning Board of Appeals has been discussing ADUs, which are really small houses or apartments or granny flats that are on the same zoning lot as a single-family residence. I think the village board last received an update about this last summer, August 2020. And since that time, the PCZBA has continued to having conversations about this, and it's gone along the way, a continuum of let's try to find a way to allow them as of right, subject to certain conditions. But over time, I think they just couldn't reach consensus on that approach, and ultimately came up with a way to handle them at this point is to recommend that they're going to be handled in a special use permit process. So they're on the verge of holding a public hearing in that regard, and I'm just bringing you all up to speed on that. That's where things are at. You should see that in a few months, so.
So just to be clear, that it's currently a prohibited use. So this is moving it from
Right.
ADUs from a prohibited use to a special use. So somebody who sought to put one on their property would then come in with an application and be considered at that time. So it's sort of the middle ground, as I understand it, between a prohibited use and
Yeah.
a use as of right.
For the years, the village expressly said, no, don't want these, and then over time, the village has granted certain relief, and most recently on the project up in Shore Acres that allowed more than one dwelling unit on the zoning lot. But this is kind of like that moving on the continuum, is not going to the full as of right, but to say, yes, we're gonna allow them, but we're gonna view them in a one-off situation using a special use analysis, special use permit.
Okay, thanks.
That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Next is our village attorney's report. Mr. Friedman, do you have a report tonight?
No report tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Next is the village president's report, and I do not have a report as well. Followed by our consent agenda. Our consent agenda will be acceptance of a correspondence and a resolution approving a third amendment to a professional service agreement with Passport Labs, Inc. Is there a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Questions, discussions? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkerman?
Aye.
Trustee Brienne?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Moving on to other business, next is item number 12, a resolution approving the purchase of rock salt for the purpose of snow and ice removal from Compass Minerals America Incorporated. Is there a motion to approve a resolution?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you very much. The village's fiscal year 2021 to 2022 budget includes $50,000 for the purchase of rock salt for ice and snow control operations. Annually, the State of Illinois Office of Procurement conducts a joint bid for roadway maintenance agencies statewide. This year's approved bid is $61.93 per ton, was awarded to Compass Minerals America, Inc. of Overland Park, Kansas. This year's price reflects a 25% increase in price per ton. At this price, the village will be able to purchase approximately 600 tons of rock salt, totaling $37,158. The village must commit to purchase 100% of the order, and the supplier commits to provide 120% of the ordered amount at the bid price if severe weather conditions arise. Last year's price per ton was $49.40, with the village salt usage totaling 700 tons due to an average winter. The village currently has approximately 630 tons left over from last season. With the purchase of 600 more tons of salt, the village will be able to adequately cover the winter season. This year's increase in price can be attributed to the loss of a salt mine in Louisiana, leading to the permanent closure of a significant source of supply. Any questions?
Just make a comment. I normally wouldn't be excited about a 25% increase, but given that we're kind of forward buying for next year, you never know what's going to happen. It's a strange environment, so.
It has. In the village, over the years, we've tried, there's been years where the village and other municipalities have seen dramatic increases to the point where it exceeded a budget. That's, I think we conservatively have learned to, we've learned to conservatively budget for that purpose, to try to make sure there's enough headspace there, but it's a commodity, goes up and down, and it's bizarre. But I think, this is, some years it's really low and we do extremely well, and others it's high, and there's really, you hear reasons why, but usually it's very hard to really pin down exactly what's happening, whereas, sometimes Lake Forest will get like 120% increase and we'll get a 5% decrease, and they're like scratching their heads, like we don't understand why, we're closer to the tollway, or our shipping costs should be less, but it doesn't seem to add up, so hard to pin it down.
I have a question, and
Yeah.
that actually is the question I asked maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. We will have 1,230 tons of salt, and right now we're planning for an average winter. What would be the amount of salt we need for a severe winter? Do you have a sense for that?
I brought Jake into the conversation. Jake, if you want to give him a number, did you hear the question? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hey, you guys can hear me. I think our worst winter was around 1,100 tons. 1,000 tons is where I always feel comfortable. Last year, so when I have to decide how much salt we're going to purchase, it usually comes in March when they ask me to commit. And winter's usually not over by then, so I don't know how much more we're going to go. So I have to look at what I have left, what I think I'm going to have left if we go out a few more times. And then I always like to have myself, like I said, around 1,000 to 1,100. And this year with the 600 ton purchase puts me at 1,200, 1,230. So makes me feel very comfortable for the season.
Thank you, Jake.
I can only recall once where we've even gotten close to running out. We had to start cutting it with sand, going 50-50, but that was only at the end of the winter and for a very brief period of time.
I remember my kids pretty bummed out with their sleds on the sun, but that's it.
Sorry about that.
I just had a quick question. I wanted to make sure I understood this right. This is a contract that the state negotiates, and then we work through the vendor that they choose? Am I correct?
That's exactly right. Yeah, so it's a state procurement, like when we purchase vehicles through them, it's a
Okay.
central management services. They do a joint procurement in terms of economies of scale. They can secure better pricing if we went out on our own, so.
Great, thank you.
Any more questions on the board? Hearing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Markey,
Aye.
Trustee Rappin,
Aye.
Trustee Ryder,
Aye.
Trustee Inkman,
Aye.
Trustee Brienne. Aye. Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next is item 13, a resolution approving a collective bargaining agreement with a fraternal order of police sergeants. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
The second?
Second.
Thank you. The collective bargaining agreement, CBA, with the village's police sergeant expired on April 30, 2021. The village negotiating team, chief of police, the finance director, and the village administrator, with guidance from village labor attorney Jill Bryan, started conversation with the sergeants earlier this year. Following multiple negotiating sessions, the team is recommending a 3-year agreement. The expired CBA had a 4-year term, and a 2.5% increase in wages each year with retroactivity to May 1st, 2021. The proposed agreement also incorporates updated language to reflect recent case law in the dues, deduction, and indemnification article. On October 25th, 2021, Sergeant Tom Vincent notified the village that the proposed CBA had been agreed to by a majority of the members. Labor attorney Jill O'Brien and village staff will be present to respond to questions from the village board. Questions? Hearing none. No questions?
No questions.
Perfect. So, hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Rappin,
Aye.
Trustee Ryder,
Aye.
Trustee Inkman,
Aye.
Trustee Brienne. Aye. Trustee Fisher.
Aye.
Trustee Markey.
Aye.
Thanks, Jill.
Thank you. Good work.
Thanks, Jill.
Very good job. Thank you very much, Jill. I lost the train of thought.
14.
So next is item 14, a resolution approving a contract with Pizzo and Associates Limited for the removal of invasive species from village property. Invasive species removal, Route 176 corridor for 2021. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved?
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Thank you. Following the village's acceptance of a grant awarded by ComEd and Open Land earlier this year, staff has solicited proposals to clear a dense thicket of buckthorn on village-owned property lying between Illinois Route 176 and the Lake Bluff Golf Course. More specifically, the work to be performed consists of clearing approximately 5 acres of invasive species, as well as initial and recurring herbicide treatments to prevent the reemergence of buckthorn and other woody invasive species. The project was developed with the participation of a number of outside stakeholders through the development of a village thematic landscape identity, gateway, and corridor plan, Resolution 2019-16, as required by the Village Purchasing Policy and Procedure Manual. The village conducted a competitive solicitation of proposals for firms to complete the work. 7 firms participated in the pre-bid meeting for the work, and 3 firms submitted proposals. See attached tabulation. Staff recommends the village approve an agreement with Pizzo and Associates, limited to complete the project for the total amount of $39,042. This includes the initial removal work as well as alternate B, which provides for 2 subsequent years of herbicide treatment to continue to suppress any reemergence of buckthorn. The village adopted fiscal year 2021 to 2022 budget includes $16,500 intended for this work. Rather than only clear part of the area, the village administrator recommends expanding an additional $16,782 from the village budget contingency in order to complete all work in 2021 to 2022. The $2,880 per year for the additional treatment provided in alternate B would be budgeted and spent in subsequent years. The village, in partnership with Lake Bluff Open Land Association, LBOA, received a $10,000 grant from ComEd Open Land in connection with this project. The Rotary Club of Lake Forest and Lake Bluff is additionally providing $1,200 as a donation to support tree planting through this project. Very nice. Any questions?
I had a question. Have we dealt with the winning bidder, Pizzo and Associates, before?
We have not personally, but they have done work in town that we're aware of, and has worked out well. And Glenn did a reference check and had good things to report.
Okay, thank you.
I had a quick question for you, Drew.
Yeah.
So, you know, in the past, I know that there's been the great volunteers of Lake Bluff, including some high school students, have been over in that area clearing buckthorn. Historically, have we also paid in addition to supplement that, or is this a kind of a new opportunity for us? Is this an annual maintenance?
No, this is a one-time, this is designed to be a one-time clearance to include chemical treatment.
Okay.
Which is, that's the difference.
So we're stepping it up.
This is most certainly stepping it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the time frame on this? Like, are they gonna start?
I think they would start this winter. Yeah, I mean, I think ideally you want to do this in the wintertime so there's less damage to the, the soils, but when the exact, contractually, when would it start, Glenn?
Yeah, so they're approved to start essentially immediately,
Okay.
and anticipates that they'll be done around March 15th. So they might schedule it any time in there. And that's when the buckthorn, not my area of expertise, but my understanding is it's dormant and it can be cleared out and treated very easily.
Great, thanks.
The key is to do it when they are not in fruit.
Spread the seed.
That's why they have to do it in the winter. The dormancy is one thing in terms of a lot of plants, but here it's that their fruit and the dispersal of the fruit. If it were in fruit and they cut it down, it's just shaking that tree, then you kind of don't, you're spending a lot of time and energy to accomplish dispersal of the fruit, and you just create a buckthorn hedge. For whatever it's worth, as somebody who works in landscaping, I read this, I'm impressed, and I'm thrilled that we're doing this. And I think the suggestion to do it all at the same time is great, and I went through and looked at the treatments, and it's beastly to eradicate. So I'm so happy that we're doing this. It's going to improve the look of that tremendously and continue the great work that Lake Bluff Open Lands has done. So I'm I'm thrilled to see this on the agenda.
Thank you. Any more questions? Any more comments? No? So hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Brienne?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Marquis?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Thank you. Next is item 15, a resolution approving and authorizing the purchase of a vacant lot on Hawthorne Court in Lake Bluff. Is there a motion to approve a resolution?
So moved. Second.
Snuck in there.
Gotta take it when you can.
Thank you. This fall, the village was contacted by the owner of an undeveloped property located in the Terrace subdivision south of the CLC Jawa facility and within the Skokie River Prairie, looking to sell the lot. The Village of Lake Bluff 2002 inventory report on village-owned lot and unique village rights-of-way recommends the village acquire these privately held lots as opportunity arise to control all of the land within this natural area. A review of village records revealed that the last purchase of property in this same area occurred in 2005 when the village acquired a 75 by 150 feet lot for $3,750. The owner of the 65 by 160 lot is willing to accept that same price for the property. The village administrator recommends purchasing the property identified by PIN number 12-20-304-015 for $3,750. Questions?
How many more lots do we have outside of?
Just two.
Two
will be
more
left.
after
And I
that?
actually got a call late last week from another person interested in selling, so then there would be one.
And what, does the village have any plan if we end up owning that large piece of property? Do we have any
I think
thoughts on that?
I think ultimately the village would try to get a higher, pursue a higher rating of preserve. I think that if we can control all the land, that when the village went through the process of getting designated a nature preserve, that it was not under unified ownership, and that was a strike against us.
Okay.
They did approve it though, and so I think if the village were able to get a handle and control all the property, they would be able to upgrade the quality of that, and so it's bragging rights to some degree, but I mean, that's as far as it would go. But right now, that, the control of that is, in terms of future use, it is in fact, it's a preserve forever and ever, so that's, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions, guys? Okay. Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Brienne?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Marquis?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Thank you, Kat. Next is item 16, a resolution estimating the amount of the annual aggregate 2021 property tax levy. Is there a motion to approve a resolution?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Joy. Annually, the village is statutorily required to estimate the funds to be raised from taxes on real estate property in the village prior to the adoption of a levy. This is an estimate and does not limit the board's ability to levy a different amount provided it is in compliance with the truth in taxation law and all applicable notice and hearing provisions. The Finance Committee, at their October 25th meeting, reviewed the 2021 levy projections and unanimously recommended approval of an aggregate property tax levy of $4,556,638. The village share of a property tax levy of $3,523,925 or $62,117 more than the 2022 property tax extension period. The library board anticipated levy request of $1,032,713 represents an $18,203 increase from the 2020 levy. The total village extension amount, including the library, is $4,556,638, which is $80,320, or 1.79% greater than the 2020 levy. This estimated levy is in compliance with the amount allowed under the Property Tax Limitation Act. The first reading of the 2021 tax levy ordinance and the public hearing will be held on Monday, November 22nd. Questions?
I had some comments that I just wanted to interject that I didn't at the Finance Committee meeting because I hadn't done all the research, so I just thought I would just wait until we got here today. A few times over the since I've been sworn in, I've mentioned the Finance Committee meeting that took place in October, or several meetings that took place in October of 2020. And I think for different reasons, we're in the same position. According to what we've learned, those of us who are new to this, we do this calculated using CPI. And just bear with me for 1 second. I'm going to make a point. I swear to God. This is somewhat complicated, but I'm asking you to consider something. The CPI in September was 5.4%. The CPI in August was 5.3, July 5.4, et cetera. We know now, and the PTEL limit, by the way, is 5%. We know sitting here right now, the aggregate is 4%. The aggregate by December will probably be over 5. So what I'm saying is we're going to have to look into the future. I read all the Finance Committee minutes, and I understand now, even if we don't do anything, which is what I'm proposing, people will see a small increase because the EAV has gone down. And if you recall, I asked Bettina twice if the EAV reduction is an anomaly or not, and she said, no, it's a trend. So we can assume it's going to happen again. The library is going to increase their levy. We are, the schools are, and the Park District is. So my point is this, and there's more. We cannot do this in good faith and as fiduciaries unless we talk about, which you did in October of 2020, a spending freeze. The other leg of the stool, and this isn't my opinion, this is just what I've been reading, and everybody knows this, so I brought visual aids. Front page news in the New York Times on November 2nd of this year, lack of car parts risks putting world economy in a tailspin. And in this article, Daimler Chrysler has seen a 25% reduction in sales of Mercedes. So we can anticipate a reduction in revenue. I realize that this is in arrears. I get that. But what I'm saying is the exact same scenario exists today that existed in October 2020 for different reasons. COVID is still wreaking havoc on our community, but differently now. So I'm asking all of you to consider that if we do this and we don't also have a conversation about because the conversation in 2020 was no more spending, and I can quote verbatim from the minutes, Trustee Toll, Trustee Meyer, Trustee Markey talking about other taxing bodies. We have things in the pipeline right now that are projects like the Streetscape project that are nearing $1 million. And I'm saying we are very reactionary. Now we are empowered to do something and say, okay, we're done. Because I believe, and I think Bettina can speak to this, I don't know if she does forecasting, but I would love to have some forecasting done as to what our revenue stream is going to look like if we don't have the same amount of revenue from sales of cars, or anything else for that matter, because the global supply chain shortage is universal. So we can sit here and talk about increasing people's property taxes to make up the difference for EAV, but now that we have this information, can we not have that conversation in conjunction with that? And if we don't, are we really doing what we've been sent here to do by all of our constituency? And I don't think we are if we do this in this vacuum. So I realize that it seems kind of convoluted and not necessarily responsive to this, but that was the conversation then, and I think it needs to be the conversation now. We just had a conversation about extending the life of the tent because of COVID. I think we should have a conversation about if we are going to vote to increase property taxes, which I can't support under these circumstances, if we aren't going to put the brakes on. So I just put that out there for a conversation piece. I think anytime we increase people's taxes, we have to talk about it. I know we did at the Finance Committee, but I really do think we have to have that going forward, and I understand we're gonna have more conversation about it, but that's just food for thought for all of you, because I've done a lot of thinking about this.
Thank you, Kate.
You're welcome.
So let's hear the board.
Can we hear from Bettina first, maybe her thoughts on, the trend and her
Sure.
expertise?
Good evening. So as far as trends with regards to revenue, is that what you're looking for?
Well, what I'd be interested in is scenarios. Where are we gonna be in the future if we do see, if Daimler Chrysler's seeing a 25% reduction? And by the way, I also have information from other North Shore dealers. So this is not just Mercedes, it's not just semiconductors. But I'm just curious, have you done any forecasting for what our revenue stream is gonna look like if we see a 10, 15, 20% reduction in sales of automobiles?
So we did look at that last year and actually did reduce sales tax by 28% and budgeted that way. And then obviously things didn't turn out as planned. So I can revisit those and present data again. Off the top of my head, I don't have those numbers, but I can certainly provide you with them again.
I just think it would be helpful, and I know you track CPI, so given the aggregates I know October numbers are gonna come out on Wednesday, so we'll know more then. But if they're 5.4%, then the aggregate increases. And I guess my question is, if we look forward, is it the aggregate that we base it on, or the solid number from December of 2021 for next year?
So it's based on what the Illinois Department of Revenue releases in December.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Bettina, it's a complicated set of scenarios that you put forth that talk about, if we take the full PTAL, if we include CPI, if we don't, et cetera, et cetera. And I wanted you to specifically address Kate's concern about the changing amount of EAV, the assessed value for the property. If that value goes down, it's my understanding that the EAV number is the denominator in determining the tax rate. So it's just taking that pot of dollars and attributing it to all the taxpayers based on the EAV. So if the EAV, let's say, goes down 1%, and your house goes down 1%, and my house goes, and everybody's house goes down 1%, then that doesn't make the tax go up or down. It makes the rate change, but the rate is extended by that EAV. So the fact that the EAV goes up or down makes that number different, but it's multiplied out by your specific. So the only way that it becomes, oh, mine is gonna be more or less tax is if, let's say the collective whole goes down 1%, but my house does great and I'm up 10%, then I will pay a larger, overall total tax dollar. So there's a few different moving pieces. So, are we concerned that EAV went down? It sounds kind of scary, like, oh, that's a terrible thing. But Bettina, you did address why the EAV number changed from last year to this year, and what were some of those factors?
So some of those factors had to do with reassessments specifically related to the commercial sectors in town. A couple years back, they were assessed much higher than they had been, and they've just gone down, and so that's caused EAV to go down as well. And then last year, there were also a larger number of protests and freezes and senior rebates and things that occurred that also reduced EAV, and that's just trickled down into this year.
So we're not concerned that EAV went down, so that means that the village is somehow in a worse position. That's not, all it's doing is changing the denominator.
It's a 3-year look back. So when they calculate the EAV, they're looking at the last 3 years. So looking forward, we're going to capture whatever increases or changes to the market may have happened this year, assuming those weren't protested. So it's kind of a moving, smoothing event between the 3-year look back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that answer
You're
your
welcome.
concern, Kate?
Yeah, and actually Bettina gave a really good explanation of it in the minutes from the October 2020 meeting, that when the EAV goes down and we don't do anything about it, in fact, people's taxes go up because you have to spread that out over all of the, all the households. So that part I understand. I mean, I thought the minutes from the 2020 meeting are incredibly helpful to understand the predicament that we're in. I'm just trying to anticipate what predicament we're going to be in next year, and anticipate that a lot of people are going to have their hands out at the same time. So if you know that today, how comfortable do you feel raising taxes tonight, is
Well,
my
it's not
point.
so much like next year, but in the next 3 years.
For the next 3 years, I mean, this could persist. So
And we don't know
again,
that.
I like, what's the saying? Forewarned is forearmed.
So let's hear from the other trustees. Concerns? Suzanne?
So I'm not entirely sure I follow all of Kate's logic, although I think I heard a spending freeze in all of that. And I think that may well be the case, but what we know for certain is that we have demands that are in the very near future, one of which is capital expenditures on infrastructure. And another is the concern that Kate raised legitimately of contributions to the pension plan. And rather than not take the PTEL rate, including the CPI and the new property into account, and take the entire amount that's on page, I can't find the page 5 of the document that I'm on. It's only going to delay what we need to do the year thereafter. It's not as if we think that, we're going to be able to get around paying for the infrastructure needs. My thought is it's far better to do a gradual increase than to not take the increase this year and then next year have to make up for that. I think a gradual change in tax rate is far better for the known expenditures that we have, putting aside any streetscape, putting aside anything else. We have some big dollars that we know are coming, and we need to tax to the amount that we've agreed that we will limit ourselves to, which is equivalent to the PTEL.
Thank you. Steve, Joy, Taryn?
I think last year when we were discussing this, we were really in the throes of COVID and trying to understand where we were. And I think a big part of the discussion was that people had been losing their jobs and there was a lot of uncertainty. And I think that's why it was a big decision to hold the line on the taxes last year. I'm okay with taking the CPI this year. I think we're in a different situation. I certainly think we need to be watching it. But I think we've had tremendous sales tax revenue this year. And I may not be 100% correct, but I feel like our reserves at this point are very high. And Barbara, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like our reserve level is very high right now. So if for some reason we felt like we needed to use a little bit of that, we could. But I'm okay taking the CPI this year. I think my concern lies next year, and I think that the CPI is going to be much higher next year,
Right.
based on what's going on with inflation right now. So I think looking forward to next year, my concerns are just how we're going to manage next year, because I feel like it's going to be a big jump. So.
Thank you. Steve or Taryn?
Yeah, me?
I'm reserving comment. I think everybody has kind of covered my thoughts. So, I mean, I just would say that what Susan said, I'm in agreement with, that I don't want to see the community struggling with a shock of cold water with a, a larger figure dumped on them. But I think we have to do that. So what I'm saying is I like the idea of gradual increase with as much transparency as we've already been providing the community with what these large expenses are that we are staring down the barrel of.
Thank you.
I appreciate Trustee Breon, looking towards the future. I think that's great. I would look to Bettina to, follow up and kind of validate to the best of her ability, where there might be concerns. And I don't know where the automobile industry is going to end up. I know that service costs are way up. I know that cars the cost of cars is way up. Hopefully they're making up for that. I'm not exactly sure. I would support the recommendation that was made for the CPI increase at this point, and we ought to pay attention for the future.
Thank you. I think Trustee Bryant is absolutely right to say that we were elected and put in this situation to actually to represent our community and to make the hard choices. I understand that last year, to Trustee Markey, we were in a very difficult, I shouldn't say different, but difficult at the time position where we were understanding at the time 25% of people lost their job. We were losing 28% of sales tax revenue, and we were literally not clear about what the future would bring to us. And at the same time, we hear that, well, we have to spend money on infrastructure. It's a hard future to stand by, to really assume. Now, one thing that is very interesting is to hear the presentation we had today about maintaining our roads. Basically, the recommendation we got today was, we're spending $500,000 on roads. Clearly, to actually uphold the quality of our roads, we have to spend $750,000. And the conclusion to that was, if we don't do that, then this is not $500,000 per year, but $10 million we have to spend to fix our roads. And so we need to the point of Trustee Fisher, we need to go gradually up. And I think it's a hard thing to decide, but I think I would support as well increasing our tax revenue.
All I'll say in response to my own argument and to what everybody said is I agree with Trustee Ryder, incremental increases are better, but my point is the handwriting's on the wall, so we're not in a different situation than we were in 2020. We're really not. This, instead of job loss, is inflation, the cost of, for example, the steel for the festoon lights is the highest it's been since World War II. What I'm not talking about road resurfacing, which is clearly important. That was a tremendous presentation. I'm referring to things that don't need to be done. And I still think we're in a belt-tightening situation regardless of great sales tax revenue because it's about to change. We all hear the news, the supply chain, et cetera, et cetera. But when I talk to somebody who runs one of the biggest dealerships on the North Shore and they tell me, instead of 30 cars on my floor plan, I have 6.
Yeah.
Service, yeah, they're making great money, but they're not selling any cars because they don't have any. So my point is, I think we react a lot, but we have an opportunity to be proactive. I'm not saying don't pass the increase. We're not talking about something substantial. What I'm saying is do it in conjunction with an agreement amongst ourselves that if the spending that comes before us is not make or break, then it's just a no. Everybody was able to do that last year and still accommodate the police pension increase and still accommodate other things that were done in the interim period. But there are some things in the pipeline right now, like the Block 1 improvements that the ABR is looking at, that don't need to be done. That's what I'm saying. We cannot put our heads in the sand and pretend like everything's fine. That's, please read, just let me finish. That's all I'm saying is, if you want to do this incrementally, that's great. But if you're not having that conversation, then I don't, Trustee Markey just said it. It's coming and it's going to be a wallop. And if everybody uses CPI for 2021 next year, all the taxing bodies, imagine that. That's all I'm asking you to consider. That's it.
Thank you. I lost my thought. I don't know.
Can I just say, I mean, I think we do look at each project and we discuss it pretty thoroughly. And we did that in 2020. We went through all those projects. Some stayed and then some were put aside for later. And so I think periodically we go through and do all that. I'm sure we're going to do it again in another finance meeting soon. And so, Kate, to your point, when we're looking at those things, we should really be critically looking at them. I agree. But I think periodically that comes up and we can reassess. And then, of course, if it's something that is quite an expenditure, we talk about it at length. So I
agree, we do.
You know, I mean,
Yeah, we do.
So this is actually the point, thank you very much. To your point, where our commitment is to always reassess, and the point I was trying to make is, if you look at the bridge we just inaugurated last week, it was actually an item that was delayed because we did not know. And so our role is to very much, we don't decide year to year, we decide today what's going to happen, and then we keep reassessing with Barb doing her job as, okay, what do we have in front of us?
Right.
You know?
Well,
so that is our assurance.
Yeah, I just make one more comment, which is, this goes back to what I said about the urgency of doing the Block 2 streetscape that's underway now. At the time that decision was made, the CPI was 5.4. We knew that, or I wish I had known that. I voted against part of it. I would have voted against all of it. Only I'm saying is that we do discuss things in detail, but I think that sometimes things come along that seem like they're possible, and then we get this information now and think, oh my gosh, we could have saved ourselves the difference, that $77,000, that $150,000. And I think that's just where all communities are right now. And I'm just imploring people to do that, because I fear that the next year is going to be a lot more difficult than we anticipate, simply because
Thank you, Kate.
the
Car sales.
because, as you said at the last meeting, COVID is over in some capacities, but not in others. Sorry, I
Thank you.
lost my train of thought there.
So any last comment?
I can make a last comment. It may be worth doing some sensitivity analysis on Bettina's part to take a look if we did have some incredible inflationary impact. I mean, I think our capital reserves are at a pretty healthy level at this point. And I would hate to be short-sighted in the things that we can do for our community out of fear of things that we think are going to come. I think we thought that the stock market was going to have a really bad October. Well, it didn't. I mean, I think that I don't want to paralyze ourselves in a very broad way when there's analysis that we can be doing. And I'd like for it to be proven before we just put the brakes on.
The Bureau of Labor Statistics is good enough for me. It's been proven. It's all over the place. This isn't fierce, Trustee Rappin. These are facts. I don't base my decisions on feelings. I base them on facts. The data is there. It's been there, and it's on an upward trajectory. I'm not afraid. I'm being cautious.
Trustee Bryan, you made your point. Thank you.
Thank you, but I think I have, and I'm here for the benefit of other people. I'm sorry, I just feel since I'm the one that brought it up, I should respond. It's not a fear-based thing, it's a fact-based thing.
Thank you.
As a fear of dragging this out, I would say one thing that I've struggled with from the village's process. This is something that's always, I kick around, and it's been bouncing around in my head this whole time, is, the village has to make this choice about property tax levy outside of a budget consideration, right? The idea, if the village was on a calendar year budget, you would be looking at all sources of revenue and looking at the expense ledger, at the same time, and that may get to a lot of your concerns of looking at, not to say that all the information would be, we don't have a perfect crystal ball now, but the idea is at least it would be looking at in the backdrop and context of all revenue sources and so forth. So it's something that we've kicked around from time to time. Do you go to a calendar year to make this conversation more complete? Not necessarily easier,
Right,
but
but
more
we're always
complete.
looking at a 12-month,
Yes.
a year. We're always looking at a year. And just like when the calendar year and your fiscal year and everything, and your sales year and everything ends at the same time, then it's like, I'm doing all these things, and it makes it difficult to actually give enough attention and presence of mind for each of those decisions. So there are benefits to each of these scenarios, and I feel like this has been the way we've historically done it. There are some limitations and some downfalls, but I mean, by and large, each time we bring this up, I learn something every time, and I think to myself, why did I not fully grasp this the last time? And so we, as a board, will continue every year to go through these same discussions, and every year you're going to learn more, and every year you're gonna say, why didn't I put that together? So, I think that with staff's direction and Bettina's guidance and her great spreadsheets and their attention to detail and ability to answer all of our questions, we're as well set up as we could possibly be. So thank you to staff, thank you to Bettina, thank you to Drew. I don't feel like we have grave shortcomings. I feel like we have a wealth and abundance of information and resources. And as a board, it's just hard for even all of us to drink from that fire hose every 2 weeks when that meeting comes up and we've got informational reports and 200 pages worth of reading. So we all put in a lot of time and we all put in a lot of effort, most of which is not seen by the public, certainly not these short meetings. It represents just a fraction of what we do. And we all, contribute. We all sacrifice from our personal lives to serve. And so I appreciate everybody doing that. Please feel free to ask questions. Please feel free to challenge the status quo. That's what we need and we want, but we also want to be, mindful that there have been a lot of people who have gone down this road before and a lot of history and a lot of good knowledge that we don't always have exposure to. So with humility, I just want to say thank you to everybody. And we'll get through it, and we'll do it again next year, so.
So I'd like to compliment that, and you're absolutely right, to Bettina's staff, who is, by the way, getting top awards for the work you're doing for our village. Thank you very much. We weathered the last 2 years, and we're back to where we could have been. We had a dip, and we came back because you and Andrew planned effectively for what's happening. I hear the concern from Kate. I'm not ignoring that. Unfortunately, we don't know what will happen in the future, so we have to be really careful about how we plan forward. And we need to have, as we did in the past, we need to have a possibility to change our mind very fast so that we can weather another downturn. And we have to plan also for a good time, for a good market in front of us. So our work is effectively hard. And I hear the board, I hear you all to say, okay, this is what we have in front of us, and we really don't know in many ways, but we try to plan for the best outcome. So thank you for that as well. So,
Could I just ask a question? This says the first reading of the 2020, to Barbara's point that we're learning all this, the first reading is going to be on the public hearing, and so it's on the 22nd of November. So we would be approving tonight.
Estimate.
okay.
Yeah, tonight's approval is just an estimate, based on what was reviewed at Finance Committee.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, could you just repeat that one more time, Bettina?
Sure, tonight's resolution is just an estimate based on what was approved at Finance Committee, and it can be changed anytime up and through the final reading.
And so we anticipate the first reading being in November, and the second reading would be the first
The first and only meeting in
in
December.
December.
And
Right.
so when, Bettina, sorry, it's Kate, when you say it can be changed, what changes would be made? Are you saying in response perhaps to public hearing comments, or that the?
So just historically, as an example, in years past, the library has come back and made a change to their request, and that was done after the estimating resolution. Just as an example of what could be done.
Okay. So for example, they could decide to increase theirs, because I know it's layered onto ours, correct?
That's exactly correct. That's what happens usually. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That's happened in the past.
Yep.
Okay, okay. All right.
But yeah, it can go up or down.
Correct.
Yep.
Right, right.
And there's a time limitation on this, right? We have to have this passed by a certain date, don't we?
The estimate is separate from the ordinance, but both have date certains that they have to be approved, yes,
Okay.
and submitted to the county.
And when does the ordinance have to be passed?
Before the end
So
of the calendar
everything-
year?
Everything has to be recorded by the second Tuesday in December with the county, so it would need to go through the board meeting prior to that. So that's how we have the schedule set
Okay.
between the 22nd and then the first meeting in December. So we're not running up against the holiday and last minute approvals.
Thank you, Bettina.
Thank you.
Sure.
So I'm afraid to ask any more questions. Last question before I call for a roll. Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Brand?
No.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Thank you for this conversation. Next item is item number 17. A resolution adopting a policy on the waiver of building and development fees for certain organizations. Is there a motion to approve a resolution?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Thank you. On October 22nd, 2021, following its review of a draft fee waiver policy, the Finance Committee recommended that the board adopt a fee waiver policy. The policy would enable the village administrators and/or the village board to grant a fee waiver or reduction in development-related fees for non-profit agencies. Questions? No questions. I did ask for a motion, correct?
You
did.
Thank you very
First and a
much.
second.
So hearing none, please, clerk, please call the roll.
Fisher? Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder? Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Brand?
Aye, sorry.
Sorry. Next is our trustees' report. Do any trustees wish to make a report tonight? Thank you. Item 19, next is the consideration of the October 25th, 2021 executive session meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve a resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. Any questions, any comments? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Brand?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Thank you. So I understand that we have also tonight an executive session. Might I get a motion to go into closed session to discuss pending litigation?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Rappin?
Aye.
Trustee Ryder?
Aye.
Trustee Inkman?
Aye.
Trustee Brand?
Aye.
Trustee Fisher?
Aye.
Trustee Markey?
Aye.
Thank you. So this concludes the open part of the village board meeting. Thank you to anyone in attendance and have a great evening.